Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right? All right, good. So I'm Audrey Derose-Wilson. I work for Audubon, Florida as the Director of Bird Conservation. And in that role, one of the things I do is I manage our JWatch program. Until recently, I co-managed it with Jackie Sulik, who was our chapter coordinator. She's retired and she's left it all to me. No, only temporarily. We've actually just filled her position, so I'll be back tag teaming it again very soon. But I wanted to talk to you about Audubon's JWatch community science program and some of the components of a successful community science program. Let's see. So what is JWatch? It's a community science program. It was established by the Nature Conservancy in 2002. Cheryl Millett here started us on this path. And so I think this means that we just had our 23rd JWatch survey coming up on our 25-year anniversary very soon. For a while, Audubon Florida took over the operation, or FWC took over the operation of JWatch, and then in 2012 passed it over to Audubon Florida. So what we do is we train and support volunteers to conduct annual surveys of populations of Florida scrub jays. And we also engage on policy issues and land management decisions that are relevant to scrub habitat and scrub jays. And we provide information to scientists and land managers at the local, regional, and state level. So why scrub jays? I know I don't need to linger on this slide here for this audience, but one of the key things that make them such a good focal species for a community science program is that they are very charismatic and social, and they capture the attention of anybody who has seen them or worked with them. And they are also an indicator species or umbrella species for a lot of other scrub plants and animals. So we can focus on the scrub jay and know that usually the management that benefits scrub jay is also benefiting a suite of other scrub species. So where does JWatch work? It changes year to year, but we usually have about 46 sites in 19 counties, kind of all throughout the range. We also have partner sites that share their data with us each year, but where we don't, they have their own volunteers or their own staff who do the surveys. But it is nice to collect the data into a single repository and makes for easier sharing. One question we often get asked is, I saw a JWatch, scrub jay here. Why isn't JWatch working at this site? So we don't cover by any means all sites with scrub jays. We work places where we've been invited by the land manager. So our goal is to try to fill in the gaps and help surveys get done in places where the land manager doesn't have their own staff or their own volunteers to do those surveys, and where a survey might not happen or might not happen as regularly without more capacity from JWatch. So when does JWatch work? We do our surveys from mid-June to mid-July, and that's because surveys at this time of year give us insight into the reproduction. That's a period when juveniles have left the nest for the most part. They're active enough to be seen, but they're still hanging around with their family and they still have their juvenile plumage. So that's one of the things that JWatch is trying to assess as an index to reproductive success. So what has made JWatch a successful community science program for the last 23 seasons? This picture sums it up to me. This is from one of our recent volunteer appreciation events. Many very dedicated volunteers. I think it takes a special kind of dedication to go out year after year into the scrub day after day in June and July. It is extremely hot. And we just have we have volunteers who have been doing it now for 30 years and they are still going strong. And that is so important. And we have, we've seen a lot of young people get involved with the program in the last few years, which is really exciting to have kind of that full range. And I think is heartening to me to kind of see the I think it speaks to the strengths of the program when you have young and old all involved. But another part of a successful community science program is not only having enough volunteers involved to truly collect the data that you need to increase scientific knowledge and inform management, but also to create opportunities for community members and volunteers to collaborate with the scientists and researchers and managers who are using the data. And this does a couple of things. It helps ensure that the data we're collecting continues to be useful and the protocol is rigorous enough and consistent enough to make it useful. But it also gives volunteers access to knowledge and information that is really important for them to have and they can take back into their communities and share. So we have more than 100 volunteers annually. This has taken, it took a dip during COVID, and each year we're kind of building back up with recruitment. We also have partners and volunteers at our partner sites and staff like FWC volunteer coordinators who help organize everything in a region that are a huge part of JWatch. Volunteer recruitment is always ongoing. So if you want to go someplace else in the state and see some other sites, hit me up. We'll sign you up. So JWatch engages volunteers in a couple of different ways. We create opportunities for them to learn about scrub jays and their habitat and the types of management they need. So in that way, we hope to create ambassadors. They go back into their communities and talk about scrub jays and other scrub animals and plants. We do this through our annual trainings. We do some in-person trainings and online trainings. And we also do this through the scrub jay surveys themselves and through recognition events like our volunteer appreciation event. And recognition and sharing information are extremely important parts of this community science program, and I think many community science programs. So we hold an annual volunteer recognition event each fall. This includes presentations, food, fun activities, this amazing cake last year that someone decorated for us. And we bring in different speakers to this event, and it's an opportunity for the JWatch volunteers to learn something new, hear from some experts. Reed Bowman spoke many times. I was looking back through some of our recent JWatch programs, and I think like almost every other year, Reed Bowman had some presence there, and we were very lucky to see him at a relatively recent one of the volunteer appreciation events at Jonathan Dickinson. This year, our volunteer appreciation event is going to be October 26th at Highlands Hammock State Park. If you're interested in attending, but you did not get an invite from our email list, let me know. I know that's right around the corner probably for some people here. In addition to volunteers, another really important component of a community science program is the collaboration with scientists. And this serves a dual purpose of educating the volunteers, providing information, and ensuring the data we collect are going to be consistent and useful. And JWatch has an advisory group made up of scientists and managers, some from Archibald Biological Station, including Reed Bowman, who was very involved with developing our protocol. And also Florida Park Service, FWC, TNC, of course, when Cheryl Millett started us on this path, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So this advisory group helped us to develop a survey protocol that it was kind of a tall order. It had to be doable by community scientists with, a day or two of training. And then we do try to pair people who are newer to JWatch up with more experienced people. But the reality is most of the people who are collecting this, they do it for, a couple different sites once a year. You can get kind of rusty on data collection. So we needed a really a survey protocol that would really still work well with that and allow us to collect consistent data across the state. The consistency was really important because we want to be able to compare among different properties and across multiple years. And so the consistency and repeatability are something that was really tested and thought carefully about in developing this protocol. So we conduct some in-person trainings and some online trainings to help volunteers learn how to implement the protocol at different places throughout the state. We usually try to do one in-person training in the northern part of the state. We often do that at the Cross Florida Greenways in Marion County, and then another at the southern part. We have done that at Archbold at different times, Highlands Hammock. Lately, we've been doing it at Volusia. In Volusia County at Lyonia Preserve. That's a really convenient facility to host at. We also have 2 on-demand online training videos. We encourage everybody to watch those before they come to the in-person training, but hundreds of people watch those each year. So we really hope everybody's watching them, even if they can't make it to a training. We also hold a welcome back and FAQ session via virtual meeting each spring, just to try to give an opportunity for people who can't attend one of those trainings to ask their questions and get answers from us. And then in the past, JWatch has also done a more in-depth advanced field training. We have, I think, usually hosted that here at Archbold. We haven't done it in a couple years since the pandemic, but there's always interest in from a lot of people in getting that going again. So how does JWatch contribute to conservation? It's very important to Audubon that our community science program do this. You know, we want to make sure that our results, our data can contribute to on the ground conservation. So a couple different ways we do that. One is by working closely with land managers. Our JWatch data can help land managers at their sites in several ways. It can be used to monitor the status and trends of scrub jays on a property. This is a figure from the Cross Florida Greenways Triangle in Marion County. It can also provide feedback on how scrub jays respond to past management actions. So it's much less in depth than some of the monitoring we were seeing previously from Archbold, where you see the population responding to a fire event, but we can still provide at a much rougher scale to land managers. We can provide that same kind of information, and it helps. The data is collected frequently enough so that land managers can detect trends early on and they can make changes. So if we did a more intensive survey, but we could only do it every 10 years, that would be less useful information. We also provide a map of current conditions that can help guide land management decisions. So here, these yellow polygons represent areas used by different scrub jay families, and knowing the locations of these scrub jay families can help managers if they're planning a burn or some other kind of management action, like some of the talks we saw this morning where it talked about not being cautious about impacting an entire scrub jay territory by fire or roller chopping or one of the other management methods, or like obliterating the habitat for multiple family groups in an area because those birds won't have a good place to be displaced to. So land managers can look at this and if they're going to do a management action where there are scrub jays, they can be more cautious. If it's an area where maybe the habitat's become overgrown and they don't have scrub jays there, they can be more aggressive with their management. We also provide data to biologists who work at the regional or statewide level. So FWC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and JWatch data contributes to data sets that assess statewide status and trends. For example, I know FWC is working on a current statewide population census, and JWatch contributed data to that. And it also helps us take a regional and statewide view to help prioritize and target conservation actions. So some of the work looking at like the meta populations and the important areas that are high priority to target to kind of buoy up those populations. And another important thing that JWatch does is it creates informed advocates who will turn out in defense of scrub jays and their habitat. For example, Vince Lamb, who is one of our former jay watchers in Brevard County, he and a bunch of other Brevard County jay watchers, they turned out over and over again repeatedly at county and municipal public meetings to advocate for the Malabar Scrub Sanctuary Restoration Project. Though there was some recreational mountain bikers who opposed the restoration because they didn't want to lose the tree canopy cover over their trails. Eventually, after many, many meetings and years of negotiations, a compromise was reached that allowed the scrub to the scrub restoration to happen. But there was a very dedicated group of jay watchers and scrub jay advocates who just would turn out meeting after meeting, year after year on the issue. And I'm sure that was helpful. So the final thing I want to say is what makes Jay Watch what it is are our dedicated volunteers who contribute in a whole bunch of different ways. We're very fortunate. I think people become particularly passionate when they go into the scrub in June and July and sweat buckets and get all scratched up and bleed, and then they will turn out for public meetings like it's no big deal, and they just get incredibly invested in the bird and in the habitat preservation. So I know that it's very difficult. We have volunteers who will go around the state and participate in as many surveys as they possibly can. And then we have volunteers who have been kind of stewarding the surveys at their sites for years and years. So I can't say enough about, it's our volunteers that make the program and our relationships with land managers and partners and the really helpful staff at FWC who do so much to help coordinate the volunteers in the region. Very grateful to them. So with that, that's my talk. Thank you. And if there are any questions and I've got time, I can try to answer them.